It was nearly 50 years ago that Tiny Zender asked a local farmer, Fred Weiss, to grow Blue Hubbard Squash on their farm. The Bavarian Inn has always been committed towards locally grown products, and the squash was a popular food with guests. So Fred and Lorraine Weiss began the squash tradition in 1966. After Fred's passing in 2010, his daughter and son-in-law, Judy and Jim Dorman, have continued the tradition.
This is the Blue Hubbard Squash that is grown for Bavarian Inn Restaurant, and it's about 9 acres total, and Bavarian Inn will get the majority of this.
Judy and Jim prepare the field for planting using an antique potato planter which mounds the rows. Once the field is ready, the seed is planted by hand walking each of the rows, planting each hill approximately 9 feet apart.
We are efficiently old-fashioned when we grow our squash, just like a lot of things at Bavarian Inn actually. A lot of our equipment is old, but it is very helpful. Dad Weiss didn't like weeds, so we keep them down to keep the field clean and to let the plants get as much of the ownership of any moisture in the ground as possible.
Once the squash is up, they receive much TLC, thinning, hoeing, and talking to.
Well, there's no one else to talk to out here, so you may as well talk to the squash. And we give them a lot of tender loving care as we can. And so when you see some, you get pretty excited.
In September, the vines begin to die off, exposing the squash. Each squash is cut from the vine by hand, ready for collection. The fall tradition starts with squash roundup. The Weiss family asks a group of friends, preferably strong friends, to round up the squash from his fields. They load them into trucks, weigh them at the Star of the West, and then take them to the restaurant. It takes around 50 students from the St. Lawrence Church Youth Group to unload the trucks at the restaurant, creating a very interesting looking squash mountain. Unique in appearance, each bumpy gray-blue squash bewilders our guests as they try to guess what they are. Some say they look like moon rocks.
They are unique in their shape and size. They'll get to be 25 to 35 pounds each, and that's a pretty good size squash.
It takes 6 weeks to prepare all the squash. Each is washed and cut into pieces. These are put into a large steam-jacketed kettle and cooked until tender. Then the squash is loaded onto racks and cooled. The meat is removed, and some of the squash will be put into freezer bags for later use. Dorothy adds her secret recipe of seasonings and butter to each batch. She uses the squash to make our delicious pumpkin bars, pumpkin butter, and pumpkin pies. Each season is different, and a bad harvest can lead to a shortage here at the restaurant. A few years ago, we had to stop making pumpkin pies because we couldn't achieve the quality our guests have come to expect. Hopefully, this year's harvest will allow us to make lots of pies.
It's a great feeling to know that we can help provide something that is enjoyed by so many guests.
Squash will be the vegetable of the day, October through December, and periodically through the year. Dorothy and her Bavarian Inn staff are proud of the great product from the Weiss Family Farm and her kitchen.